With all the volatility in the market right now, a lot of home buyers are asking the question, is right now a good time to buy, or is there a pending crash coming? Well, in today's video, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. Let's get into it. What is going on? It is Andrew and
AJ.
And today we're going to be discussing the state of the market a little bit and should you be buying or should you not. And before we get into it, just keep in mind we are a real estate company first. So if you have any questions in that regard or you're thinking about moving to this area, well, we cover everything from Pensacola to Panama City Beach and everything in between. So you've come to the right spot. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and tap that little bell so that you'll be notified every single time we do a new video. And we are getting calls, texts, and emails pretty consistently of people wanting to move to our area. If that sounds like you, all of our contact information is on the screen. Now, let's get into it.
All right, so you've been looking at the market. Maybe you were thinking about purchasing a little bit earlier, but you wanted to see a cool off, and you're wondering now that it's kind of heading towards that point, is this a good time to buy? So we're going to go into the pros and cons right now of purchasing right now, and we're going to do something a little bit different than what we usually do. We're going to talk about the cons first.
Yeah, to try to change it up a little bit, because we're positive people. We want to start with the pros, but you know what? The market is just crazy right now, so let's start with the cons. Con number one, the big one on everybody's mind. Interest rates are going up. If you are using a loan to purchase a home, your interest rate is going up. And we don't know how much further it's going to go. So the Fed has hiked their rates last month. It looks like they're going to do it again June 15th, probably do it again July 15th, August 15th, and even September 15th. So as interest rates continue to climb just a little bit, it's not going to be dramatic. I don't think we're going to see 10%, 8%, anything like that. But as it continues to climb, that is going to be one of the biggest cons that you have because it's going to make your home buying experience and your payment for 30 years or 15 or whatever you're doing a little bit higher.
Yeah, it's also going to mean that your debt-to-income ratio is higher. So maybe that $500,000 house that you've been eyeballing, hoping there was going to be a price reduction, just actually went above and beyond your debt-to-income ratio ability because now your interest rate is going to be higher. So your debt would thus be higher. So unless your income is going to increase as well, you might have just got, outpriced essentially.
Which is another big con that we're going to start seeing over time. I think it's going to be a little bit of time, at least in our marketplace, where the first-time home buyer is, I dare say, getting priced out of the market, but it's inching toward that, right? As it's easier and easier to pick up these less expensive homes, and as those are increasing in price over time, the income is not increasing with it. So it's definitely something to consider. And as you said, the debt-to-income ratio makes a really big difference on the amount that you can purchase if you're getting a loan.
Something else, the second, big looming scary con, we'll say, is everybody's anticipating, not everybody, but many people we're seeing, like all the loud voices are anticipating a big market crash, another 2008 kind of time frame. Obviously, nobody knows what's going to happen. There are just indicators for certain things. But in the event that that kind of crash were to happen in, say, a year, if you were to purchase today and then have to sell, in a year or maybe a year and a half, you could potentially be looking at a loss if you weren't looking at holding that property for quite a bit of time.
Yeah, I think a lot of this can be eased down a little bit, especially you guys that are watching this channel already. We've done a bunch of videos on this kind of stuff over the past couple of months as the market is changing. Highly unlikely that's going to happen, but if we play the game, as I like to say, let's play the game that it does. Let's say we have a massive fallout of prices of like 10%, which I know to a lot of people, they're reading the doomsday things online and all this other stuff, 25%, 50% of 2008 is going to happen. Baloney, right? There's a supply and demand issue at the end of the day, but let's pretend it does. So let's take a 10% loss per se, and you're looking at a $500,000 home. 10% is $50,000. It's going to knock that down to $450,000, which for a home buyer sounds like, oh, well, then maybe that's a good thing. That's awesome. But when interest rates are 2 points higher than they were before, that same home is a little bit more expensive than it was before. So we have to be careful about that conversation because even if, which none of the data is pointing toward, even if it were to drop down, let's say 10%, your payment's still going to be a lot higher. So that all being said, in that catastrophic moment, yes, okay, prices might go down, let's say, in that situation. But at the end of the day, if you're looking at the actual data, not from doomsdayers, not from people that are trying to clickbait you, not from people that are trying to do a great headline. I just read a headline the other day that talked about how many massive foreclosures there were coming and all of this other stuff, not coming, but actively happening. Or like there were 8 times as many foreclosures happening right now than in any other time or whatever. And they were using this small data point from like a 3-month period after you read into it. Guys, be very careful what you're listening to online. We study this stuff day in and day out, and frankly, there's a supply and demand issue. I don't see prices decreasing. I do see a decrease in prices happening. I do see price reductions happening for people that were too aggressive, and I do see prices stabilizing back to pre-pandemic levels. Even if you listen to the credible pessimists, and big emphasis on that word, they're credible, not bait clickers, anything like that, they're still showing an increase of almost 11% over the next 5 years with zero decrease in mind. That's pessimist. It's not even getting into the optimists that are thinking 27, 28%. So we fall somewhere in the middle, and it looks like prices are going to restabilize pre-pandemic levels, which is a great thing for a lot of people. So at the end of the day, nobody has a crystal ball, but the data is the data, and it doesn't look like prices are going to crash anytime soon. So let's go ahead and skim past that and go on to our next con.
I would say our last and most kind of prevalent con right now that we're seeing like intimately right now is if you're looking to buy right now and end up matched up with a seller who had priced their property very aggressively and don't want to sell for less than what they anticipated it going for, given, the way the markets were going, but then it comes back that it appraises a little bit lower because they're a little too aggressive, they might not want to sell it anymore, or at least not at that appraised value. And it might be a fight to stay under contract without coming to the table with some cash to bridge that appraisal to purchase price gap. So definitely something to keep in mind when you're looking at these super nice places that you just know when you look at them. Sometimes you're like, this is priced a bit aggressively, but then you want your offer to get accepted, right? So you're like, okay, yeah, I'll pay more for it if it's worth it, but no one's expecting it to come back, lower than that. Everyone's like, oh yay, I got it, and the seller's like, oh yay, I'm getting more for it, and then the appraiser's like, no, you're not. It could happen. So it's just something to consider in this market.
Yeah, and we'll generally see this anytime a market begins to start making a turn in a different direction. That's the best way to describe what's happening right now. It's just like it's been going full speed like this for a while, and we're just going to turn like this. We're just going to go back to normal, right? But when this happens, us as real estate professionals and anybody else, when they're going to a property, sometimes they're like, hey, this is what your house is worth based on these 3 comps. And sometimes they're like, hey, this here is a range. And when we're in a heavily appreciating market, a lot of sellers tend to lean on the right side of the range, the heavier side of the range, right? Well, yeah. Why not, right? There's strategies and stuff I'm not going to get into, but that's where they tend to lean. So those are the sellers that are generally going to, I don't want to say cause a problem, but it could cause a little bit of a hiccup because everything you just said. But just note, my point with this is generally it only lasts like 3 to 6 months. Actually, most of the time it's about 3 months before most home sellers that have been on the market, at least for that period of time, start readjusting their price a little bit and going, okay, well, I can't get that super max value that I thought I was going to be able to get. And as you mentioned, that could definitely become an issue.
All right, so transitioning from all of those cons into the pros of purchasing.
Finally, the pros. Finally.
We're the pros.
Yeah, there are pros to this market.
All right, so let's think about it, right? So we know that the interest rates have gone up a little bit, right?
Yeah, that's just poop for everybody.
Poop for everybody, but that means it's also poop for property owners that are renting out their properties. So when you're looking at, well, should I purchase right now knowing that there are these cons, or should I rent right now? Well, let's look at what that looks like. That's a lot of looks. So for the same $300,000 house at a 5.5% mortgage, you're looking at a roughly $1,700 a month payment, right? Give or take. That same house where that property owner is looking at, their prices increasing for taxes and potentially insurance because everything's kind of gone up a bit. Their prices have gone up as well. So you're looking at about a $1,900 rent per month as opposed to that $1,700 and you don't own it. And when you walk away, when you need to sell or move and turn it into your own rental, you have nothing to show for it. So still probably better to use that money to invest rather than to just give it to someone else's investment, if you will.
Yeah, so bottom line, like the rentals here in our area are clearly more expensive than mortgages, even at this point. Even if prices were to do that mysterious drop that some doomsdayers are saying, it's still going to be a little bit more expensive, at least for the time being, right? Now, this could be an update video in 6 months saying something completely different. Nobody's got a crystal ball. That is definitely something to consider, because at the end of the day, your investment, your dollars are being thrown away like any rental. We don't need to get into the basics of that. I think most people watching this channel understand that.
So, and talking about, those future projections of rentals, we don't see those numbers decreasing at all. Even if buyers unfortunately got priced out, maybe a $300,000 house is no longer, something attainable for a buyer who, at a 5.5% interest they could purchase, but now it's gone up to 6 maybe, and now their debt to income ratio doesn't allow them to purchase a $300,000 house and they're forced to rent. Well, that's going to be a lot of people. Right? And so all of these people that can no longer afford to purchase are going to have to what? They're going to have to rent. And so there's no reason for these property owners to lower their rent amount. It's actually, like, I hate to say it, but business is business. It's almost more a reason for them to increase a little bit, because people will be forced to pay those rates because you got to live somewhere, right? So we do not anticipate the prices of rentals going down to facilitate people finding housing just because they get priced out of purchasing. So just keep that in mind so that you're able to, protect yourself and always have a place to live, essentially.
And that's like based on the last 20 years too. That's not just something that we're just pulling out. Like the last 20 years, even during the last crash, rentals stayed considerably higher than mortgages at the time. Now I know it was harder to get a mortgage after the economy crashed and everybody, whatever. And that's part of the reason they're going to take advantage of it. But it's a business, just like you said. So they're going to take advantage of that. Now, let's get into my favorite pro, at least for home buyers, probably not as much for home sellers, but as we start going from a very aggressive seller's market to a not as aggressive seller's market, maybe even transitioning into a neutral market, which I don't think so, but let's play the game. What we're going to see is these people that are priced aggressively, as we mentioned, are going to drop their price. Got it. We already talked about that. But the next big thing that we're going to see is a little bit of flexibility. So pre-pandemic, what we were seeing, not always, but for a good chunk of it, you could ask for approximately 2 to 3% of the purchase price for extra stuff. Maybe it's repairs, maybe it's concessions, maybe it's closing cost assistance, maybe it's whatever it is. That was pretty common, to pay list price but still get a little bit back. Not a lot, 2 to 3% is not a ton. I'm not, whatever, it is what it is. But it does tend to trend that way. So if we continue going down the path that we're going, some sellers, the ones that have been hearing, hey, my house sold in 1 day or 3 days, and now it's been a week and a half or 3 weeks, they're going to get a little bit more anxious from what they've been hearing from the market. So they're going to be a little bit more willing to budge on some of the terms. Hopefully this means the notorious as-is contract, which has been the only one I think I've written in 3 years, might go away. We might start getting repairs again from our sellers to our buyers, so that our buyers are not getting stuck with whatever the seller already did to the property.
And something else too is that we get a lot of buyers that have a contingency of needing to sell their property prior to being able to purchase another one. And here recently, it's been a minute now, but we'll say recently, that just hasn't even hardly been a thing that sellers would accept. What, you're not ready to purchase right now and your house isn't even listed, or even if it is and maybe it's under contract, no, I've got 4 or 5 other offers where that's not the case, so I'm going to go with theirs even though your price is higher. Well, now you could actually probably negotiate higher and have the winning bid because you would have some funds to bridge an appraisal gap, whereas another offer might not.
Which brings out a whole class of buyers that are sellers first in a different state or different area, maybe even this area, need to sell first and then bring back in, because a lot of you guys, if you're in that boat, have been waiting on the fence going, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I got to sell this house, I got to move somewhere else, I'm going to be homeless for a bit. What if I don't find something right away? Well, that is slowly going to trend in your favor. So that's a big, big deal.
Pro,
there we go. Thank you. And we do have one last pro. Take it.
we do?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. One less pro. So even if we do see a slight dip in the market, the good news is it's going to climb right back up. Anytime we've seen a dip in the market, it has come back up. Even if it takes a matter of years. It's kind of like the stock market. You're in it for the long game, and then it rises exponentially higher. So still a solid investment, as long as you're not looking to buy right now and sell in a year, in which case you pay a lot in capital gains regardless.
Yeah, actually, if we could just blanket this entire video with, if you ever plan on buying and selling in a year thinking you're going to make a big profit, yes, it is possible. Yes, we saw it during the pandemic. It is highly unlikely to time the market that way. If you don't have at least 2 years into the property that's on average price appreciation over the last 100 years or so has been somewhere between 3.5% and 4%. I don't have the number right in front of me right now. That's kind of an even keel sort of thing. That's a yearly thing. So as long as you're willing to hold the property a little bit longer than a year, you should generally be fine. Now I know in 2008 we saw a different story there, but this is not 2008.
These are all our pros and cons for purchasing in today's market. Go ahead and comment down below if you're still with us what area you're thinking about moving to. This way we can delve into that specific area and let you know what the market is doing there. And then we'll just catch you next time, as long as you hit that subscribe button. Bye, y'all.
See you. Let's do it. That's us jumping into it. I don't know if you, it's a little.
Yeah.
That's us. Actually, I should do it this way. Hold on.
I think you should just stop doing it.
Yeah, probably.
A few moments later.